name's Joanne Wood. Welcome to today's episode of Coffee Break. And today I'm here at the Horden Pavilion for the Festival of Dreams. And my dear friend, Dr. Joanne Messenger, is going to present a talk on
menopause and menopause.
So menopause is female.
Yes, correct.
And menopause is also called andropause.
Andropause, yes.
Okay. Now,
because with the men, they have the androgen hormones.
Okay. Now, Joanne, this is my understanding. I am now postmenopausal and I love it.
Yes.
It's fabulous. It's wonderful. Instead of your life,
Yes.
you know, it's kind of...
Yeah.
And so what happens, it's a huge milestone in a human's life, isn't it?
Yeah.
So for a woman, when she goes into menopause, her body diminishes the amount of estrogen that she's secreting.
Correct.
And post-menopause, she produces testosterone.
In a healthy functioning woman, that's precisely the case. In a not so healthy functioning woman, they don't even produce the testosterone that their body needs.
Uh-huh.
So when a woman goes into menopause, it's basically that the reproductive functions should fade away, so that they can step into the wise woman, the crone, the passing on of her natural wisdom, rather than being responsible for childbearing and raising children now.
So you're the grandmother stage.
Correct.
And the grandfather stage.
Correct. So with the woman, throughout our lives, we go through the child, the mother, and the wise woman or the crone. So with the men, they go through the phases of the lad, the dad, and the patriarch.
Uh-huh.
So they're natural, distinct steps.
And Joanne, it's a topic that's not often discussed in our culture, particularly on TV.
Correct. It's often not discussed in our culture because often it's been met with derision. You know, there hasn't been a lot of respect for elderly people in our culture, and not a lot of respect necessarily for lack of beauty in our culture, which can tend to happen with menopause and menopause.
But I always say, why can't a woman get more beautiful the older she gets?
Correct.
And see, why is everything measured from the male perspective? You know, like in a patriarchal culture, a woman has to conform to what the media tells us is the man's vision of female beauty.
Correct, and this is how it's been for eons. And fortunately, there's kind of like a subculture rebellion going on where a lot of people now are going, no, we don't want that measure anymore. We want to recognise the different faces of beauty, the different colours of beauty, the different kilograms even of beauty.
And I say it's not so much the outer beauty. What is the most important thing is the inner beauty.
I agree. It doesn't matter how much makeup you put on a person, if there's not that inner smile that comes out, we know. we can spot a grumpy inner heart.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Now, I was telling someone before about how energy works, because you're an energy healer.
Correct.
And I am one of your patients or clients, and I love coming to you.
Thank you.
Once a month you put me back together in the right... Yeah, I get a bit frizzled and frazzled and fried, but after coming to see you I feel grounded.
Correct.
And I was telling someone that there are people whose energy goes out.
Yes.
Like this, like our energy
Goes out.
We share things.
Yes.
And there are people whose energy moves like this.
Yes.
So that cannot hang out with that, because we'll get drained.
Correct. Yeah.
And if your energy actually goes like that, there's something seriously wrong.
Yeah, there's something that needs to be addressed, something that needs to be resolved, because everybody has a gift. And it's like if people are having their energy keep coming in, if they feel the need to take from others, they haven't found their gift yet.
Yes.
And if they could just keep delving through the layers, find their own gift, and then share that with the world, then wouldn't that mean a better planet?
Be wonderful. And everybody has the capacity
Correct.
to do that.
Yes. Yeah. And I really feel that that's one of our individual purposes in life, is to find what that gift is and then go share that within our community or whatever the scale is. Because these days, people can share with the whole world with the use of technology and social media, just using it wisely.
So, Joanne, do you believe in introverts and extroverts?
I really feel that people have a personality, and the soul is different to the personality. So often people will behave in an introverted way or an extroverted way to fulfill the destiny of the soul. So for instance, me, contrary to what many people might think, I'm an introvert. I like to just hang out and listen, whereas my work and my gift to the world, if you like, demands that I behave in an extrovert way. So it's kind of like learning to be and master what you're not, so that you can be an introvert or behave in an introverted way or an extroverted way according to what it is that you're doing at that particular time.
Menopause and andropause isn't a topic that's widely discussed, and it's very hard to get information on what to do. But you've written the book, and you've studied, and you're going to talk about this in your talk.
Correct.
Can you tell the audience what age would a man go into andropause and what age a woman would go?
Okay.
Because it's gradual.
It's gradual. It's gradual. And obviously it can vary from individual to individual. So we're going to talk sweeping statement and generic. And generally speaking, men reach their full power much younger than women. You look at men in their 20s and 30s, if they know what it is they want to do, they can just go for it. They can reach their goals and they can just soar. Whereas at this particular time, in history at least, women have been rearing children then, and they've had to wait until the child rearing's been done to get to that point of menopause to be able to go soar. So typically women get to that age later than what men do. So whenever the child rearing's done, 45, 50, that's when it is for women. For men, it tends to be earlier because they soar, and they either reach their goals and go, well, what do I do now? Or they don't reach their goals and get a little bit jaded and the shine goes off life a little bit. So they tend to be there a little bit more in their early 40s and try and make up for it by other means.
I know, that's the famous male midlife crisis.
Correct.
They leave the wife of 20 years, they run off with the younger woman, they buy the sports car.
Correct.
And it's like a hunger or a grieving for
what they used to have, rather than recognising that this is just another stage, and actually an incredibly useful stage. If these men would acknowledge that, hey, they're stepping from the lad, the dad, they have a lot of wisdom that they can pass on to the dads and the lads. It's just that part of the male wiring so far has been that they want to do it themselves. Whereas where we're coming to now is sharing with the community, sharing with the dads and the lads, passing the baton on and realising that grandfatherhood or matriarchism isn't a bad thing. It's a really good and essential thing that's actually been missing from Western culture for a long, long time.
Well, I'm having the best fun being a grandmother. It's a hoot.
I can't wait.
Oh, I see so many grandmothers. We're an ageing population and there are so many women my age pushing a pram or granddads pushing the pram. And they've all got this big grin because it is such a lovely experience.
I'm grinning about it, thinking of the future. I'm not even there yet.
Joanne, this is your latest publication.
Correct.
And it's a wonderfully helpful book. because when you're going through menopause, there's very little resources that you can go and find out about. Now, obviously, you're interested in natural ways of
Correct.
negotiating this tricky journey, and
Yes.
it is a tricky journey.
Yeah.
I've been there,
Yeah.
and you can go a little bit mad.
Yeah.
I did talk to a woman once, and she said, I take hormone replacement therapy as a present to my teenage children because otherwise I'm going to kill them. So it can be tricky.
It can be tricky. I come from the natural point of view because I come from a point of view of self-responsibility. If there's something happening in my life, then I'm the one who's created that. So if there's an imbalance in my body, then ultimately it's up to me to resolve that imbalance. And certainly if somebody is at the extremes of something and they need chemical help of some sort, go do that.
Yes.
But
yes.
don't ignore the reason of why that extreme imbalance is there in the first place. Go resolve that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And an interesting thought I had thinking about this was in astrology, there's the Saturn, what is it?
The Saturn return.
The Saturn return.
Yes.
And as far as I understand it, when you're moving from young adulthood into adulthood, there are issues in your childhood that you have to resolve.
Correct.
Before you go on to become a fully fledged functioning adult.
Correct.
And no one can do it because it's too hard.
Yeah.
So when you are perimenopausal, which is the early onset menopause, there is the Saturn return or the Chiron?
The Chiron return.
Chiron.
Yes. Yeah.
And in the Chiron return,
So what this means is the position of the planets in the sky when you were born, the time it takes for those to return to that same position takes a natural cycle. So for Saturn it takes 28, 29 years. For Chiron it takes around 49 years. So the things that you haven't resolved in your life throughout those cycles will be extremely magnified to give you the opportunity to recognise what needs resolving. And some people think that that means that something bad is happening to them. No, no, no. Something really good is happening to them. They're being shown, often very in no uncertain terms, what it is that they need to change within themselves and their lives to be able to move to the next step.
So Joanne, it's all about growing older, not getting.
Correct. Yeah.
Until you grow your entire life until, well, eventually we're all going off the end of the conveyor belt, aren't we?
We are.
Got to have a bit of fun first.
Have a bit of fun first. Yeah. And fulfil what we're here to do.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we can fulfil what we're here to do and have a bit of fun, well, that's a pretty good life, isn't it?
Yes, live your dream.
Live your dream. I'm Dr. Jo Messenger from Dr. Joanne Messenger's Be in One Piece. Thanks for coming along today. There's lots of things that you could be doing, and instead here you are giving up things that you'd really like to do for something that you really like more. And that's really important. In our talk today, our topic is menopause and andropause, but I've got a little bit of suspicion that we'll be covering a whole bunch of areas, so sit back and allow whatever's right for you to just land. Because it's really important that you get out of this what's right for you. We're all different, and in the past it's kind of like women have been shepherded into one area, we're all the same. Men have been shepherded into another area, they're all the same. And if there's anything that we've learnt in the last 20 years, we're not all the same. In fact, we aren't even the same day to day. Sometimes we're not even the same hour to hour. So think of it like it's important for you to find your own truth. Whatever I'm saying that resonates with you, soak it in, take away, make sure you take your action steps on it. If it doesn't sit right with you, don't necessarily toss it out straight away. Just put it on the back burner and have a little bit of a ponder about it, because you might find in a couple of weeks, couple of years, it's like, oh, oh, that's what she said, that's what she meant, now it kind of makes sense to me. But above all else, it's like you take home what's right for you. You know more about your life than anybody else at all, and you know far more about your life than what I do. My background to do with hormones is basically from personal experience. As a young girl, I was a very high achiever and was doing competition gymnastics, and at the age of 12 was doing back salts on a trampoline, landed on the frame and fractured my pelvis. And so from that point on, my whole life changed. My periods stopped, I had my appendix removed, I gained weight, and it's kind of like really nothing was the same from that point on. And fortunately, 5 years later, I went to a chiropractor and my period came back, and that worked for ages and ages and ages, and then it didn't work anymore. And so then I learnt about herbs, and that didn't work anymore. And then I learnt about essential oils and flower essences and meditation and yoga and blah, 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 blah. And it's kind of like, if you can relate this to somewhere in your life, I'm sure it applies. It's kind of like my greatest wound, the accident that upheavaled my life, ended up my biggest gift. Because I had to learn all of these things to help myself, which then ended up what I used to help everybody else. So that's the very foundation of what I used to actually even write my book, How to Balance Your Hormones, which now people are using to help themselves. Because there's so many resources available now, how do you know what works? You know, and I'm really practical. I don't care how fancy something is, how good the marketing is. If it doesn't work, I'm not especially interested. It actually has to work. So from me, you'll get very practical advice. And at the moment, it's like so much change. We've got plastics in our environment, we've got chemicals in our food, our water, our air, our hair products, our soap. We've got more artificial things in our environment now than ever in modern history. So it's kind of like we're trying to weave our way through to be as natural as we possibly can to support our bodies, but it can be a little bit overwhelming. But at the same time, it's like I really encourage you to do whatever you can to make your lives and your sanctuaries as compatible to what you need as you possibly can. And for instance, even with plastics, we know now that plastics can upset how estrogen works in our body. It can actually mimic estrogen. So for a lot of people, women and men and young girls and young boys and even babies now are having their whole hormonal system just because they eat off plastic food, eat off plastic plates, the food's wrapped in plastic, things are even microwaved in plastic. So it's like all of these disruptors to our hormonal system, sometimes it's even irreparable damage. You can't even go back to how it used to be if you stop using those plastics and things. So we've really got to start doing something differently. And with the propagation of so many of the hormone disruptors in our food and our environment, some people aren't going through that phase until even mid-50s and 60s, rather than that 45-50s age group. And here again, in the past, it used to be just something, it was a normal event. It didn't have all of the drama and everything around it that is so common now. So it's really important to recognise within yourself the need for initiation, the need to step up to the next level of your own journey, because society isn't reflecting it for us anymore. So what does that mean? You know, what does that mean for you? Quite specifically what it means is any unresolved issues that you've got, time to resolve them. Because if you don't, it'll come up when you don't want it to and bite you on the tush. Oftentimes, like a health issue or an outburst of emotion or an upheaval in a relationship or career or whatever, wherever you haven't resolved something through that menopause and pause phase, it will come up magnified. So it's kind of like if you don't listen to the whispers, you get the screams. So it's like for you as individuals, it's like, where can you change this in your own life? Where today can you go home and behave differently, come from a different place? And quite typically, whatever it is with the men in your environment, whether it's brothers or sons or workmates or fathers or husbands, it's like whatever they do that annoys you the most, that's where you need to start. What's underneath that? Go resolve that. And for the men, it's like whatever the women are doing in your lives, whether it's the sisters, the wives, the mothers, the aunties or whatever they're doing that annoys you the most, it's like, okay, start there. Yeah. Because everything that's happening in our own environment, it's kind of like a mirror. Whatever the people around us are showing us, that's in us somewhere. If you're around people who are angry all the time, it's like, okay, where are you angry? Go resolve that. If you're around people who are miserable and sad and depressed all the time, it's like, okay, where are you miserable and sad and depressed? Go resolve that. It's like start looking at what's happening around you in your own immediate environment as your own therapist. It's a mirror. It's a direct reflection of what you need to change in yourself. And quite typically as human beings, we want the world to change, we want the politician to change, we want everyone around us to change. We're not so keen always to change ourselves. And yet that's the key, because until we change ourselves, nothing else can change. Get back into your heart. Speak up. It does not mean be subservient and go there, it's okay. It means speak up from your heart. Every single day, reconnect with the Creator, with the God, Goddess, universal intelligence, whatever you want to call it. Keep reconnecting with that higher energy. Keep calling your intuition and your gifts back. Keep coming from your heart rather than your mind. Because whenever we speak up from our mind, men hear it as you just want to be right, you're telling us we're wrong, blah, 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 blah. And in essence, we kind of are. But we want to be saying, hey, there's another way. So if you even take a moment to breathe into your heart, then express your opinion, then the men can hear it in a way that's not threatening. They can actually have an opportunity to go, okay, something's changed, I don't feel like I'm being attacked, nagged, made wrong, not good enough, failure as a man, etc, etc, etc. And so for the men, it's like if they can get to the point where, oh, thank God we don't have to be responsible for everything anymore. We can get some help here and realise the women don't want to take over, that the women aren't saying we're wrong anymore. It's like we want to make peace and actually hear what they're saying and work together. And it's not about women being a diluted form of a man. And it's not about men being a super sensitive, diluted form of a woman. Absolutely not. We want the men to be men, we want the women to be women, and work together, recognising each other's gifts. And if we can do that in our own little corner, then that can spread to further corners and to further corners and to further corners.